Kenneth Law is now facing 14 charges of first-degree murder, and his lawyer says he will plead not guilty. Good evening. It's a stunning development. We already knew Kenneth Law was accused in connection to 14 deaths.
The charges against the man accused of helping people end their lives by way of sodium nitrite he sold online have now been upgraded to first-degree murder. CTV's Mike Walker joins us live now with the latest developments. Mike.
Well, Michelle, Nathan, Kenneth Law facing the most serious charges in Canada connected to 14 deaths across the province. Legal experts we've been speaking with today describe this as a novel case that they say will be a test for the courts. Kenneth Law is accused of selling and sending packages of sodium nitrite, a potentially lethal substance in high doses, to people who died by suicide. Police have linked the Mississauga man to 14 deaths in Ontario, and charges against Law have now been upgraded from second to first-degree murder. His lawyer telling CTV News Mr. Law will be pleading not guilty to the upgraded charges.
What we're seeing now are the fruits of the search warrants and the forensic investigations that have been conducted on his computers.
This former homicide detective says the upgrade to first-degree murder implies that authorities believe there was planning and deliberation.
Clearly, they've looked at the communications between Law and these victims, and they have certainly come to the conclusion, with the assistance of the Crown Attorney, that there is sufficient grounds to up the charges from second to first.
It was just last month police charged Law with 14 counts of second-degree murder, in addition to 14 counts of counseling and aiding suicide. Investigators have said all charges are related to the same 14 victims between 16 and 36 years old. Police allege Law ran several websites and sold 1,200 kits of sodium nitrite, a meat preservative, worldwide, including 160 kits in Canada. Legal experts say the circumstances make this case extremely unique.
It has never been prosecuted like this before, but it's never been charged before. Not only never in Canada, never anywhere.
A test case for the courts, they say.
I think it's going to be challenging. There would have to be compelling evidence that he's constructed these packages specifically to kill, that in fact he had knowledge that the individuals he was sending it to were going to take it so they would die from these substances.
Law's lawyer also confirming the case will proceed by direct indictment, meaning it will go straight to trial.
Which means he will be deprived of the right to a preliminary inquiry, which in every murder case an accused uses to learn the case against him. It's often done where the Crowns think they have a slam dunk in a high-profile case.
None of the allegations against Law have been proven in court. Law remains in custody and was due back in a Newmarket court next week, but his lawyer doesn't anticipate that will happen, with the case now going straight to trial. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Nathan, back to you.
All right, thank you, Mike. And CTV John Woodward broke the story last night about all 14 charges being upgraded to first-degree murder, and he's been speaking with families of the people who died. John.
Nathan, I've spoken to several family members whose young loved ones died after allegedly consuming Law's products. One Ontario woman said news of the charges just left her in shock. But remember, these packages have gone all around the world, and some people in other countries we've talked to said it's about time for these charges, and they're hoping their country's legal systems use Canada as an example. So 1,200 packages went from a Mississauga post office around the world to 40 countries. Some in the UK have dubbed him in the media the Poison King. In January 2023, one of those packages landed in the home of 25-year-old Imogen Nunn, a deaf TikTok influencer known as Deaf Immy. Her mother, Louise, says she waited months after Imogen's death for a coroner's inquest before anyone told her Imogen had died from sodium nitrite. A receipt connected her to Kenneth Law. She's hopeful the charges in Canada will deter others from sending out packages like those.
I hope it, sends that message to people. You cannot play with people's lives. You have not got that right.
In the UK, authorities say their Kenneth Law's packages may be connected to 93 deaths now, which combined with other deaths in Canada, New Zealand and the US, the total deaths Law may be connected to is now 125. Law's lawyer says he plans to plead not guilty to the first 14 first-degree murder charges here in Ontario. He's not facing any charges outside of the country. Those figures that we just gave you are compiled from authorities, from family members, from media. But like I said, people like Imogen or like Louise Nunn believe that that Kenneth Law should face other charges elsewhere in the world. Reporting live, I'm John Woodward. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, John. We have extensive coverage online. John's been working on this story for several months. Just head to ctvnewstoronto.ca. Coming up, a look at the housing crisis through the eyes of a single father, the struggle to find shelter for his 6-month-old child, and his search for a permanent home.
Well, it was a wet start to the day across the GTA. A late January downpour led to pooling in some areas, flooding in others, including this stretch of Bayview Avenue near Nesbitt Drive. It was shut to traffic for several hours, but reopened by noon. A live look this hour. Cloudy conditions. There's a slight chance of drizzle tonight. You might encounter fog patches, but no more heavy rain to contend with like overnight and this morning. We got so much of it. We actually broke a record. Look at these numbers from Environment Canada. Toronto Pearson logging 22 millimeters of rain, smashing the record set all the way back in 1974, which was 16.3 millimeters. If you look at Kitchener, Windsor, Welland, Pelham, London, Hamilton, Vineland, they got even more rain than we did. It was quite the soaking. That is now behind us. We have beautiful, well, beautiful, not as wet. It is nice and cloudy this evening, but nice conditions if you do have plans. The temperature right now in Toronto, 2 degrees, feeling like -3 with the wind chill. So factor that in if you do have plans. Make sure you got something like a coat or mitts. You might need it with when you factor in the wind. We'll tell you how the weekend shapes up a little later in the newscast. But now we turn to a story about the housing crisis and how it is hitting home for a man and his baby boy.
He's looking for a stable place to live, but he says availability and a lack of shelter space for someone in his situation has become a major barrier. CTV's John Musselman joins us live with all the details. John.
Well, Nathan, he says he feels like he's going around in circles, but he's just looking for solutions. He's not necessarily looking for a handout. Sterling Simple says he just wants to provide a home for his son, Julian. He was recently granted custody of the baby because of the mother's struggles with drug addiction. The problem for Sterling now, he and his son are homeless.
But as a single male with full custody, there's only one shelter in the York region that's available to us, and it's actually a woman's shelter that they utilize a little portion of for men. So there's really nothing set in place for anybody in my sort of situation.
Simple says he's been turned away from more than half a dozen shelters in York region and Toronto because there is no space for him and his son. Children's Aid has provided this hotel room in Markham, but it's only for a week. He needs a long-term solution or a landlord willing to rent him a place.
I just want stable housing for my son and I, where I can return to work in the trade that I work in as a heavy mechanic and succeed like I know I can. My only restriction at this moment that's stopping me from succeeding is my inability to be housed.
Kayla Ward is a close friend of the baby's mother. She is also helping Sterling care for the baby. Ward reached out with a community posting online explaining the situation. The response has been overwhelming.
Like an insane amount of support and resources and people wanting to actually help and like pay for the hotels and donate food, clothing, anything really.
They are hopeful this story will lead to a permanent home for Dad and the baby.
There's people in your own communities going through situations like this that no one's aware of, and that there needs to be awareness because there needs to be more resources that families like this can access.
Sterling says he may get some good news next week on a possible place that would cover the month of February. He's grateful, but he says he still needs something long-term to provide a secure home for Julian. And Sterling says he wants to go back to work, but he also needs daycare, and he can't get daycare until he finds a permanent place to live. Reporting live in Markham, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, John. And if you have a child, are they up to date with their measles vaccination? After outbreaks in the U.S. and the U.K., we're being told it's a wake-up call. We'll have that story coming up.
And take a look at this. There were disruptions to some morning commutes after a truck with a boom crashed into a transit bridge in the junction. It happened at around 7:30 at Weston Road in St. Clair. Nobody was hurt, but a chunk of concrete was dislodged. Train service was halted for about an hour, and eastbound St. Clair didn't reopen until around 3.
5 people were hurt in a crash in Mississauga overnight. A vehicle rolled over in the northbound lanes of Southdown Road near Lakeshore Road around 2 a.m. Peel police say one person was transported to hospital with life-threatening injuries and one with serious injuries. 3 others were treated at the scene for minor injuries.
Police in Durham region are investigating a stabbing they say took place as part of an attempt to steal a service dog. This allegedly happened early Saturday afternoon in Pickering. Police say two men approached the victim and demanded he hand over his dog. An altercation followed and the victim was stabbed in the leg, but the dog was not taken. The victim then drove to a Toronto hospital and contacted police. He had minor injuries. Durham police are now searching for those two suspects and their vehicle, described as an older Ford F-150.
A decision on whether Israel is committing genocide in the Gaza Strip is likely years away.
But today, the International Court of Justice pressed the Jewish state to prevent that from happening. CTV's Adrian Gobriel reports.
While protests erupted outside of the United Nations top court today.
Please be seated.
Inside the International Court of Justice, a panel of judges ordered Israel to do all it can to prevent death, destruction, and any acts of genocide in Gaza, but stopped short of calling for a ceasefire.
The court is acutely aware of the extent of the human tragedy that is unfolding in the region and is deeply concerned about the continuing loss of life and human suffering.
Today's ruling comes after South Africa brought a case to the ICJ over allegations of genocide against the Palestinian people in the wake of the October 7th attacks, in which nearly 1,200 people in Israel were killed and some 240 were taken hostage. The Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza says more than 25,000 people have been killed in that region, though their tally doesn't differentiate between civilians and Hamas fighters. The court ordered 6 measures. Among them, Israel must prevent genocide, take immediate steps to ensure humanitarian assistance to civilians in Gaza, preserve any evidence of genocide, and submit a report. The court also called on Hamas to release all remaining hostages. In Ottawa, the Prime Minister offered no immediate reaction while Liberal MPs were divided.
My position has been that Israel is not committing genocide, that it's baseless and it's insulting.
Canada believes in international law, and whatever the decision of the ICJ is, we should accept that.
On the eve of Holocaust Remembrance Day, Israel's Prime Minister vowing to continue his military operation in Gaza.
The charge of genocide leveled against Israel is not only false, it's outrageous.
Though some advocates for peace in the region are now calling on Canada to take a harder line against its allies in Israel.
The first thing that Canada should do is immediately impose an arms embargo on all trade of military goods between Canada and Israel.
Israel has to submit a report on the measures it's taking within a month. The decision is legally binding, though the court has no mechanism on its own to enforce it. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Toronto.
The United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees has opened an investigation into several of its employees. They're suspected of involvement in the deadly October 7th attacks by Hamas. The agency says Israeli authorities have provided information about the alleged participation. The contracts of those employees have now been terminated. The U.S. says it is temporarily halting additional funding to the agency.
Closer to home, Toronto police say they've spent millions of dollars in overtime pay to secure hundreds of protests since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. Toronto police confirmed to CTV News since October 7th, they have responded to more than 340 demonstrations of varying sizes, from dozens of people to more than 25,000. They say officers have been redeployed from other areas to prioritize more immediate public safety needs. Police say the response has costed $7.5 million, nearly $3 million of which was for overtime pay.
Tomorrow is Holocaust Remembrance Day, a time to pay tribute to those murdered during one of the worst moments in human history. To honor those who survived, Jewish groups, politicians, and other dignitaries attended a commemoration at the National Holocaust Museum in Ottawa.
Today we stand shoulder to shoulder with Canada's Jewish community. More than words, we stand with you through fire and water, to honor the millions of innocent family members who perished due to an unchecked wickedness. May the memories of those lost be a blessing. Their memories never in vain. The Jewish community is never alone, and so to the nation we insist, never again.
There were calls today for increased vigilance to combat the scourge of current anti-Semitism. Last year, Ontario announced it would be the first in Canada to introduce mandatory Holocaust education. 5 other provinces have since said they will do the same. And what better way to learn about the Holocaust than from someone who survived it?
Today, grade 6 students in Toronto got a real-life history lesson from a woman whose family fled Nazi-occupied Europe only to be turned away at every port. CTV's Janice Golding reports.
And now I live in this beautiful country, Canada, and I'm a Canadian, a proud Canadian citizen.
Anna Maria Gordon is now a Canadian, but the octogenarian was once turned away from the country she loves when she was just 4 years old in fleeing Nazi-occupied Europe.
They didn't anticipate that they were going back to Europe. I mean, it was upsetting not to be accepted into Cuba, but there was this belief that somewhere in North or South America, somewhere they're going to be able to eventually get off the ship.
Gordon was aboard an ocean liner along with more than 900 other Jews who fled Europe in 1939. Their story documented in Kathy Kacer's nonfiction book, To Hope and Back, The Journey of the St. Louis. To Hope and Back is the subject of the TDSB's One Book event, when grade 6 students and their teachers across the board are encouraged to select one book and study it at the same time. The passengers aboard the St. Louis would be denied entry at every port, including Canada's, and would have to return to Europe.
Well, we stayed alive because my mother was a very optimistic person, and she was very strong, and she said, we are going to get out of this.
Gordon and her mother would eventually end up in a concentration camp.
It was horrible. We were only 6 girls in the camp, 6 children. And it was very scary. There were guards with big dogs. We didn't have food. We didn't have clothing.
The board selected To Hope and Back for this year's One Book event, given it's the first year grade 6 students are receiving mandatory Holocaust education as per the province's new social studies curriculum.
I thought it was really inspirational and really important because as we've seen in events that have happened lately, we need this. We need more people talking.
It's good to learn about this with all the anti-Semitism that's going on.
The TDSB also live streamed today's event, so students at 74 other school boards across the province could listen in on the discussion. Janice Golding, CTV News.
After Ottawa announced a cap on the number of international students coming to Canada, the province is planning its own reforms to the post-secondary system. The Ministry of Colleges and Universities says there will be a review of programs at institutions that have a sizable amount of international students. Officials say the goal is to both protect Ontario's reputation as a world leader in education and to meet labor market needs. The province says it'll step up efforts to crack down on bad actors, enticing students with false promises of jobs or permanent residency. It will also require institutions to guarantee housing options are available for incoming international students.
Ontario's Minister of Colleges and Universities, Jill Dunlop, added in a statement, "We must find more ways to work together to combat gross recruitment practices while protecting our ability to attract the world's best and brightest to study here in Ontario. These actions will also ensure that we implement sensible policies that protect against worsening Ontario's housing affordability issues. We need to ensure that students coming to study here have a place to live."
We now know when Mississauga residents may be heading to the polls to elect their next mayor. Bonnie Crombie stepped down from the top job this month after holding it for a decade when she took over as leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. A report from Mississauga's city clerk sets June 10th as a date for the by-election, subject to council approval. If that date is confirmed, candidates will be able to hand in their nominations from March 6th through to late April.
The Toronto Public Library is sharing a brief update on its recovery efforts from that major cyber attack last year. The library's digital services have been down since late October when a ransomware attack came to staff's attention. Officials said they would start phasing services back in around late January. The library tells CTV News those efforts are on track, with its website set to return in the coming days. Public access to library computers is expected to resume early February.
The BC government is directing all school boards in that province to restrict the use of cell phones in schools.
To make sure that students are not interrupted from their studies, to make sure that the peer pressure to get a cell phone is relieved for parents, and to make sure that kids are safe at school from social media dares, from online bullying, pictures, video being shared of other kids at school.
The policy will be in place by the start of the next school year. There will also be a service soon to help young adults and other people get their private images taken down from websites. And legislation designed to hold companies accountable for harm caused to the public will be introduced in the spring.
A senior government official has told CTV's Question Period India is now cooperating with Canada in the case of a Sikh separatist leader who was murdered in BC.
I think we've made advancements in that relationship, and they understand what we believe happened. The RCMP investigation is well underway, and so I can't speak too much about it, and the RCMP will hopefully be able to prosecute the individuals accountable and responsible. But my discussions with my counterpart in India have been fruitful.
Diplomatic relations soured after Prime Minister Trudeau said Canada was pursuing credible allegations the Indian government was potentially linked to the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. India has denied any formal government role in Nijjar's murder in June.
Canada is set to resume exports to Turkey. This move follows President Erdogan's decision this week to ratify Sweden's bid to join NATO. Ottawa will once again send drone parts to the Turks after suspending sales in 2020. In exchange, there will be more transparency on where they are used. This deal is expected to kick in after Turkey sends its final ratification documents to Washington. Hungary is the only ally yet to ratify Sweden's membership.
In New York, Donald Trump was ordered to pay more than $83 million to E. Jean Carroll.
I don't even know who this woman is. I have no idea who she is, where she came from. This is another scam. It's a political witch hunt. And somehow we're going to have to fight this stuff. We cannot let our country go into this abyss. This is disgraceful.
The Advice columnist accused the former U.S. president of destroying her reputation by denying he sexually assaulted her nearly 3 decades ago. Carroll sued Trump in 2019 over his denials 5 months earlier and won. Today, a federal jury ruled that he must pay for her damages.
In the UK, the king is recovering after having planned treatment today to address an enlarged prostate. The monarch is said to be doing well following the procedure at a private clinic in West London. The palace says His Majesty would like to thank all those who have sent their good wishes over the past week. The king is in the same hospital where the Princess of Wales is receiving treatment after undergoing abdominal surgery last week.
Back here at home, and the tale of a long-lost dog who's finally been found.
He went missing months ago from a farm on the prairies. And as CTV's Sean Leathong reports, he ended halfway across the country in the big city.
This is Bear, a dog who was lost, but then found 2,500 kilometers from home.
I'm still in shock. It's been 7 days, but it's just been a whirlwind of 7 days.
Back in September, the 3-year-old German Shepherd went missing from a farm outside Regina, Saskatchewan. Owner Conrad Frederickson was driving away to go golfing.
I left the yard and I happened to look in my rearview mirror and seen he was running behind the truck, but the dust was coming up from the wheels, and I figured he would eventually stop, turn around, and when I got back from golf, he was gone.
Conrad searched for Bear, spending nights driving around. Numerous Facebook posts featuring Bear went unanswered. 4 months with no sign until Bear showed up at this animal hospital on Bloor West in Toronto.
January 17th, he was brought in by an individual and his mother for an exam as a new patient.
Andrea Macri owns the Islington Village Animal Hospital. She looked after Bear, saying the dog was happy, smart, and healthy.
They explained that the son was working on a farm in Saskatchewan, and in the beginning of September, a dog showed up on the farm, had a collar on, but he was afraid to take him to the shelter because he thought that they would euthanize him.
Bear had no tags, so the man took care of Bear for the next few months, eventually bringing him home to Toronto. Based on the story, the animal hospital checked Bear.
We scanned Bear for a microchip, and indeed he did have one. We called the microchip company, who then directed us to the Humane Society in Saskatchewan.
The Humane Society in Saskatchewan put Andrea in contact with Bear's owner and Bear's caretaker here in Toronto.
And the guy's like, "Oh, I got your dog." I was just, what? Pardon? And then, I talked to him a bit, and he was obviously very sorry that he took him.
Friends started a GoFundMe page, already raising over $2,000 towards a goal of $3,000 to pay for Fredrickson's travel to Toronto to reunite with Bear and bring the dog home.
The way things are looking, possibly by next weekend.
The dog, who seemed lost forever, will now be returning to his forever home. Sean Leathong, CTV News.
Coming up, a landmark discovery 97 light years from Earth. The Hubble Space Telescope finds water molecules on an exoplanet. Could this be a sign of life in the cosmos?
When we've just jumped up a degree, +3 this hour, mostly cloudy. The ice rink looking quite busy. Not much in the way of active weather to contend with if you're hitting the town or going out for a walk as well. Environment Canada noting you could see some drizzle, fog patches. If you are heading further afield this weekend for some winter fun, it is mild for this time of year. In Collingwood, Muskoka, the Kawarthas, nice temperatures, slight chance of flurries, but really cloudy and enjoyable if you're heading out. Also, stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV. Astronomers have made an exciting discovery 97 light years from Earth.
Using the Hubble Space Telescope, they've detected water molecules in the atmosphere of a small exoplanet. The planet is about twice Earth's diameter and is the smallest found to have water vapor. Water is essential for life as we know it, but the exoplanet is unlikely to have any type of life because of searing temperatures that would turn the water vapor into scorching steam. Good to know.
Brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
All right, to the forecast. Hard to believe we actually did get some sunshine today. It lasted for, 5 minutes, so it seemed?
It didn't matter. That shot of sun, the sky felt so blue. It's like, where have you been?
And then things changed back to the gray skies.
Back to the gray skies. But hey, the weekend's here. I don't care what the weather is. I love the weekend. Let's have a peek at what's happening right now. Temperature-wise, currently 3 degrees in Toronto, which is really nice for a Friday night in the city. The wind chill making it feel a bit cooler, like 0. So keep that in mind. It's even warmer in Windsor. Look at that, 4 degrees. So here is the satellite radar this hour. You can see the cloud cover in Toronto, Hamilton, Niagara Falls. You can see to the west, there's a system there. It's looking like it's going to miss us, although keep in mind early tomorrow morning, there might be the chance of some drizzle. So here is how it plays out. This is into Saturday, pretty much a cloudy day. And then come Sunday by about noon, there is the potential for rain or some flurries. The temperature will factor in here. So keep that in mind if you do have plans. There's a 40% chance of flurries or rain on your Sunday, and then it pushes out in time for Monday. Temperature-wise tonight, the low 2 degrees, the norm, look at that, -10, so we are well above normal for this stage in January. Tomorrow's highs, 4 degrees. Keep that in mind. We might even see some sun tomorrow, which would be really nice. So tomorrow is all around a great day if you have plans well above seasonal. 7-day forecast looks like this, so we might see some sun for Saturday. Your high of 4, the low down to 1. Sunday brings that potential for flurries and mixing. It's not a washout by any means, but keep in mind it would be an afternoon event. The high 2. Monday, things settle down. Cloudy conditions, a bit cooler with a high of 1, and we could see a chance of flurries or showers on Tuesday, the high 3. And it's looking like we might get some sun Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, mixed with cloud, but honestly, it's still really early, and all of that could change. So keep that in mind and enjoy your weekend weather-wise.
While summer is still some time away, the city is preparing for Registration Day for its Camp TO programs. The city says Camp TO will run from early July to late August with more than 30 types of programs available at more than 140 locations. Registration isn't open yet, but residents can now head to the city's website to check out what activities are available. Sign-ups will then open online or in person on February 7th.
But winter is still in full swing, so one of the biggest events on Toronto's culinary calendar is now underway. Winterlicious kicked off its 20th year today with more than 200 local restaurants taking part. They're offering 3-course fixed-price menus costing anywhere from $20 to $55 for lunch and $25 to $75 for dinner. You can find a full list of participating restaurants on the city's website.
And if you're planning to take the TTC to your Winterlicious reservations or anywhere else this weekend, there's a subway closure you need to know about. Line 1 will not be running between Davisville and Lawrence stations on Saturday or Sunday, and that's thanks to ongoing work on the Eglinton Crosstown. Shuttle buses will be running and regular service resumes Monday.
She left the spotlight after being diagnosed with a rare disease called stiff person syndrome, and many now wonder if Celine Dion will ever perform again. It's the focus of this week's W5. We've got a preview coming up.
Health experts in the UK are warning a serious measles outbreak could grow to tens of thousands of cases.
And a prominent Toronto doctor says Canada has to take steps now to prevent outbreaks here. CTV's health reporter Pauline Chan has more.
Canada saw 12 cases of measles last year, but in the U.S. and Europe, cases are soaring.
Even in Ohio, the United States, a high-income country, there was an outbreak in 2022, 85 cases in kids. Half of them were hospitalized with this, and none of the people infected were fully vaccinated. So, this is a big deal.
In Europe, there were 30,000 cases from just January to October last year. In all of 2022, there were just 944 cases.
And this really reflects a lapse in vaccination. We know the measles vaccine is very, very safe, and it's extremely effective in preventing measles infections. Remember, measles is one of the most transmissible infections on the planet.
Measles is transmissible through the air or infected surfaces, and it can remain active for up to 2 hours. And there is no real treatment, so vaccines are key. That's why Toronto Public Health has just begun new vaccination clinics for children and students.
Which includes all the vaccines that you could usually get at your primary care provider, including a family doctor or a pediatrician, and the vaccines that we typically provide through the grade 7 school program. So those clinics are going to be every week between now and the end of the school year on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 12:30 to 6:30, and at 3 of the different civic centers in Toronto.
Measles can affect anyone of any age. Symptoms include cough, runny nose, high fever, and red eyes.
What can be unique about it is you can often get white spots in your mouth, and there's a very typical rash that is very red and flat, starts on your face, and generalized covers your body.
Pauline Chan, CTV News.
It's been more than a year since Celine Dion was diagnosed with a rare disease called stiff person syndrome. That condition and the singer's journey are the focus of this week's W5.
You live a very isolated life. But what helps us the most are the people that know about our illness and still keep in touch to encourage us. That really helps a lot. We feel less isolated. Maybe this disorder will become more well known, which is a good thing. She will probably have access to different treatments than I've received, which will help us find the right treatment.
Five's episode, Celine's Silence, takes a look at the prognosis for patients and whether the music legend is likely to ever return to the stage.
And there's still a lot we don't know about stiff person syndrome, and Celine Dion hasn't said much about what she's doing.
But there is still some information on the matter. We're joined now, as you can see, by W5 executive producer Derek Miller. Thank you for being with us. I think so many people feel for Celine Dion and are curious about how she's doing. At this stage, what do we know?
It's been a long time since we've heard anything. She made that announcement that she was canceling her European tour back in December 2022. And that was the first time that we had heard from her in a long time, because she had exited really from the public limelight sometime before that. Just November past, she showed up at a Habs game in Vegas, and that was the first time anyone had seen her in person in 4 years. And so we haven't heard anything. She didn't talk to the press. The only person who has talked from her inner circle is her sister, Claudette. And you do hear from her in this documentary. And the headlines on what Claudette has been saying is that Celine does not have control over her muscles all the time. And we're not just talking about her arms and her legs. We're talking about her diaphragm, her thoracic muscles. And so that, of course, is the part of your body which is most associated with your ability to sing.
Wow. Can she ever recover? Is there treatment for this?
Well, the short answer is there's no cure. There is treatment, and there are drug regimens that can reduce the severity and the frequency of the spasms. And there's also physiotherapy, which we know that she is undergoing right now. But the truth is, this is a lifelong struggle for anyone who is diagnosed with it. And it's exceptionally rare. It's literally 1 in a million people is the incidence for this disease.
And you can tune in for the full report, Celine's Silence on W5. It airs tomorrow night at 7 right here on CTV.
A new legal battle is brewing over artificial intelligence after a content creator tried to revive the voice of the late George Carlin.
From my side of things, it feels like me. I consider myself to be George Carlin.
That voice may sound a lot like the man himself who died in 2008, but it's actually from a new AI-generated video trained to mimic his iconic comedic stylings. Carlin's estate has now sued, calling the recording a casual theft of a great American artist's work. The creators haven't commented.
Elton John's final concert tour may be over, but he's planning to help fans relive the experience all over again with a new book. The musician's Farewell Yellow Brick Road tour spanned 5 years. John said he wanted to share some behind-the-scenes insights of his life on the road while remembering the people and places that shaped an incredible chapter in his life. Farewell Yellow Brick Road, Memories of My Life on Tour is out in September.
Justin Timberlake has set dates for a new world tour. I want every bit of you. I guess I'm selfish. The singer shared his new single, Selfish, yesterday ahead of dropping his first solo album since 2018 titled Everything I Thought I Was. Timberlake also confirmed dates for the Forget Tomorrow World Tour. The first concert is in Vancouver in April. There are no Toronto dates scheduled as of yet.
The first trailer is out for the directorial debut from Oscar-nominated actor Dev Patel.
And running on quiet to the soul of my son. Don't call me son.
Patel also wrote and starred in Monkey Man. The action thriller tells the story of a young man working in an underground fight club seeking vengeance for his mother's death. The film's inspired by the story of a Hindu deity. It hits theaters April 5th.
After it dominated the 2023 box office, Barbie is back in select movie theaters for a one-week run. The film garnered 8 Academy Award nominations, although notably those did not include director Greta Gerwig or the film's star Margot Robbie. Warner Brothers said it was excited to give moviegoers a chance to see Barbie again on the big screen.
The Stars Tonight is brought to you by Lastman's Bad Boy, court-approved liquidation sale.
There would have to be compelling evidence that he's constructed these packages specifically to kill.
Updating our top stories, a man accused of selling sodium nitrite to people who later died by suicide is now facing 14 upgraded charges of first-degree murder. Kenneth Law had faced second-degree murder charges after his arrest in May for allegedly selling the chemical online. The charges have not been tested in court. His lawyer says he'll plead not guilty.
Israel must ensure with immediate effect that its military forces do not commit any of the aforementioned acts.
The International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to prevent death, destruction, and any acts of genocide in Gaza during its military response to Hamas's October 7th attacks. Israel's prime minister called the charge of genocide false and outrageous. A full ruling is years away.
So there's really nothing set in place for anybody in my sort of situation.
And CTV News spoke with a homeless single father in York Region who's been unable to find shelter space. Sterling Semple says he was turned away from more than half a dozen facilities across York Region and Toronto. The pair are currently staying at a hotel paid for by Children's Aid as they turn to friends and community members for a long-term solution. In business news, tech stocks have been big gainers in the first few weeks of 2024. It is not just the U.S. tech giants in the spotlight. B&M Bloomberg's Jacqueline Hansen has the details.
There are just a handful of tech stocks on the TSX, but so far this year, many of them have seen some pretty big gains. And a new report suggests there could be more upside from here. That report from National Bank analyst Richard C. lays out what to expect from some of the Canadian tech companies, from Lightspeed to Shopify. The analyst suggests that there's an opportunity for many of them to increase sales while also cutting costs. And he says, considering all the macroeconomic uncertainty, that will be a key driver of stock performance this year. Well, let's take a look at some of the closing market numbers for today. The Canadian dollar is trading slightly higher at 74.37 cents U.S. West Texas Intermediate oil gained 65 cents to $78 U.S. a barrel. As for stock markets, the TSX added 23 points to end the trading week at 21,125.28. That is the latest in business. I'm Jacqueline Hansen of B&M Bloomberg.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
Earlier, we mentioned Ottawa's new cap on international students, aimed in part on easing the strain on Canada's housing market. Well, Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem now says he believes the decision will help take some pressure off of soaring demand for rentals. BMO's chief economist says that could lead to rents rising slower, but he doesn't expect any price drops. The average asking rent in Canada last month was a record $2,178, according to Rentals.ca and Urban Nation.
As Amazon prepares to include ads in its Prime Video streaming service, it looks like the company is going to cash in. Videos will start running on the service in the U.S. in the coming days, followed by Canada in February. Variety cites a Morgan Stanley analysis showing Amazon will generate $3.3 billion U.S. in revenue from those ads worldwide this year, and that figure is expected to grow in 2025. Subscribers can pay a monthly fee to avoid seeing ads.
The Toronto Raptors are back in action tonight, looking to avoid their fourth straight loss.
Look at this guy right here. Williams gets to the iron.
Toronto lost to Memphis Monday night, making it 3 in a row. This evening, they'll try to get back in the win column when the Clippers come to town. LA is on a 3-game winning streak.
Here's Robertson trying to twist away from Pioff. Now he goes to bench in front, scores! Austin Matthews!
The Leafs have the night off before taking on the Jets on the road tomorrow. Toronto's coming off an overtime win against Winnipeg in the opener of a home-and-home set. The Jets have lost 2 straight for the first time since late November.
Get out of the way of the ref. And a quick chance there. Puck is loose in front. They score!
Meanwhile, Toronto hosts New York tonight in a rematch of the first ever PWHL game. The visitors won 4-0 on New Year's Day, but Toronto did get some revenge 4 days later when they went on the road to defeat New York. Puck drop is 7 o'clock.
And the tennis world is buzzing about a major upset at the Australian Open. Jannik Sinner has ended Novak Djokovic's unbeaten streak at Melbourne Park. He defeated the 10-time champion in the semifinals today. Djokovic hadn't lost a match at the Grand Slam since 2018. Sinner will face Daniil Medvedev in Sunday's final.
Well, please do not adjust your TV. That is a beaver, and it is on the streets of Toronto. We'll have the details on this beaver in the big city after the break.
Tonight, a lost dog turns up 2 provinces away from home.
Our first thought is, okay, we have to get him. But how?
The cross-country scramble to reunite him with his family. Later on CTV National News.
And a reminder, the CTV News at 6 podcast is available as a download every weeknight. And a special hello to those of you listening to the newscast live on News Talk 1010.
Hey Toronto, I'm Nicole Cervinas.
And I'm Teddy Wilson, and welcome to Things to Know TO.
Each week, we shine a spotlight on a wide variety of local businesses, services, events, and initiatives from across the GTA.
And if you or your company would like to be featured, you can contact our team by email at thingstoknowto@bellmedia.ca.
And don't forget, join us on Saturday mornings on CP24, CTV, and CTV2.
And hey, why not follow us on social at Things to Know TO.
Well, there is nothing like enjoying nature when you're out for a walk in the woods or the countryside.
But there are a lot of animals that live right here in the city, and residents walking along the waterfront got an exciting glimpse of one of those creatures.
He knows we're all watching.
Yes, that is a beaver in downtown Toronto. You might call this an attempt at waterfront redevelopment. And with the waterfront view, you can't blame the creature for trying to make itself a home. The beaver was spotted near Queens Quay and York Street. According to the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, the American beaver is quite common in Toronto. Sometimes you see it around the DVP too as well.
Oh, you've seen a beaver before?
Yeah, in the little median area.
Ah, wow.
Anyway, so the weekend, how's it looking?
Yeah, let's talk about your weather forecast. And you know what? It's rather mild, which is nice, although there's the potential for some unsettled weather. Let's have a peek at the radar at this hour. So the rain is gone, cloudy conditions, which is quite nice for a Friday in the city. If you're planning on skating tomorrow and you're an early bird at 9 a.m., 2 degrees, cloudy, we might see some sun around the noon hour, but really we're getting up to 4 degrees by 4 p.m., which is quite nice. So tomorrow's looking like the better day of the two with that high of 4 degrees. Sunday, the potential for mixing rain or flurries, 40%, high of 2. Monday settles down, just cloudy and 1, but it cools down a bit. And we could see flurries again on Tuesday and maybe some sun next week, a little more than we got this week. That's it for us, but be sure to join Heather Butts tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Natalie Johnson with our next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For all of us here at CTV News, thank you for watching and have a great night.